How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Kuf Tes Vav, Daf 115 of Masechet BavaKama. Friends. Yo, friends. This might be an hour. This might be an hour. This could totally be an hour. Well, let's see. All right, we're going to start on Daf Kuf Yudalad Amud Beis at the Mishnah, about 10-15 lines from the bottom. It says the Mishnah, Hamakir Kelev Usvarv Biad Acher. Very interesting. Ukimto. V'yatzalo Shem Gneva Bo'ir Yishovalo Lokeach Kamanosan V'yitol V'im Lav Kol Himenu Shani Omer Mechorin LeAcher U'lekochon Ze Himenu. Wow, Chevra, I'm going to roll up my sleeves. 1 second. Wow, sorry, I just spaced out there. Alright, gosh. Okay, where are we? Okay, so let's start over from the Mishnah. Hamakir Kelev Usvar Biad Acher. Very interesting situation. So, what should we do with Ruvain, Shimon, and Levi? Chevra, BavaKama is today. BavaKama is today. Letting you know. So I'm just trying to figure out who's Ruvain, who's Shimon, and who's Levi. Shimon, I think, is going to be the Ganif. Okay. Ruvain is going to be the Lokeach. And Levi... Wait 1 second. Wait 1 second. Shimon stole from Ruvain and sold to Levi. Okay. So Levi and then Ruvain. Okay, Ruvain's the victim. Shimon's going to be the thief and he sells it to Levi. I think that's how we're going to work out Ruvain, Shimon, and Levi today, alright? That Ruvain's going to be the victim, right? So Shimon steals from Ruvain and sells to Levi. That's going to be kind of the mahalach of the daf. So Ruvain goes to Levi for a Shabbos Suda. Ruvain goes to Levi for a Shabbos Suda. And as he's sitting there and he's noshing, he recognizes the silverware. He says, wait a second, this is my silverware. This is my silverware. It was stolen from me and somehow it ended up in Levi's house. So Ruvain goes to Levi and he says, Levi, I'm sorry to say so, but sadly it's true that this silverware is mine. So Levi, of course, needs to give it back to Ruvain because it's Ruvain's. Okay, so what does the Mishnah say? So Makir Kelev Usvarv Biad Acher. So Ruvain, Ruvain recognizes his silverware at Levi's house, right? Either his vessels or his books. V'yotzelo Shem Gneva Bo'ir. And there have been rumors already in the city that Ruvain got robbed. So it's common knowledge that Ruvain was recently the victim of a theft. And now he's at Levi's house and he recognizes his silverware. So Yishovelo Lokeach Kama Nosan V'yitol. So Levi swears to Ruvain, okay, look, I paid $1,000 for this silverware. So Ruvain gets his silverware back, that's for sure. So Levi gives the silverware back to Ruvain. But Levi doesn't need, he didn't do anything wrong. He doesn't need to lose his money. So Ruvain, gives him $1,000 for it, but Ruvain is most certainly entitled to get it back. Levi cannot hold on to it. V'im lav, now if there was no rumor prior that Ruvain was the victim of a theft, well then, lav kol himenu, then we can't just believe Ruvain to say that he was robbed if nobody heard about it. Shani omer michorin la'acher v'lokhon ze himenu. Because I might just say, how did Levi get it? Well, Ruvain sold it to Shimon. Shimon sold it to Levi. It's now Levi's, right? Ruvain can't just get it back, right? So meaning if there were rumors that Ruvain was the victim of a theft, okay, so now he's at Levi's house, he recognizes his silverware, so he can get it back. But if he's just at Levi's house and nobody heard anything about Ruvain getting robbed and he's just having a Shabbos Suda at Levi's house and he recognizes his silverware and decides, hey, he misses them and he wants to get them back, so he can't necessarily, he can't force Levi to give them back to him. Now says the Gemara, V'chiyotzelo Shem Gneva Bo'ir Mai Have. But the Gemara is a little skeptical. Just because there are rumors that Ruvain, shtickle conspiracy theory, right? Just because there are rumors that Ruvain was the victim of a theft, who cares? Leichush Dilma Zabninu Vihu Nihu Kamapik Shma. Maybe Ruvain sold his silverware to Shimon. Shimon sold it to Levi. Now Ruvain's feeling bad. He changed his mind. He doesn't want to sell his silverware. So you know what he does? He starts making a whole rumor that he got robbed and he was a victim of a theft. And now he's at Levi's house and he recognized the silver. Wow, that must have been the silver that was stolen from my house. But it says he's telling the truth. Maybe he's the one who started spreading the rumors. Maybe it's all baloney. Well, for example, that people were in his house, and he stood up and he started yelling and screaming balayla in the middle of the night, and he says, Nignivu kelai, my stuff got stolen. So I guess we have a scenario where he caught them red-handed, because there were people in his house and he started yelling and screaming, get out of here, what you doing, you're stealing. But still, kol sheken ilo motza. What do you mean? I can all the more so claim, what do you mean? He was just waiting for the perfect opportunity, right? Really, he sold his silverware to Shimon. Shimon then sold it to Levi, fair and square. Ruvain feels bad. He regrets having sold him, so he waits until people are at his house in the middle of the night, and that is when he lets loose with his yelling and his screamings. But maybe he's being dishonest. So if Kahana Messiahim b'mishmei de Rav, so if Kahana says in the name of Rav, Kigon shahoisam achteres chsura besoch beso, well, it's talking about where he had a tunnel under his house. Reuven had a tunnel under his house. Uvnei Adam shelanu besoch beso, and there were people who had a sleepover party in his house. They were staying in his house. Yotsu, and they went out by way of the tunnels. Ve'anbur kiros shel kelim al kisveim, with bundles of vessels on their shoulders. V'akol omrim, and everybody's saying nignivu kelev shel ploni, that Ruvain got robbed. So that's the scenario where we know that Ruvain got robbed, because there were people coming out of tunnels from his house with his stuff. Vidilma kelim avu svarim lo avu. Okay, but maybe they only stole vessels. Maybe they didn't steal books. Well, they also said that there were books that were stolen. But maybe they only stole little books, and he's claiming big books. Sefer ploni ufloni. Well, they said these specific books were stolen, so they already knew in advance which books we were talking about. Vidilma havu hatike v'katoin chadata. Yeah, but maybe they were old books, and he was claiming new books. Rav kigon de amrei alalu kelev shel ploni, alalu svarv shel ploni. Well, the people were saying, look, these were his vessels and these were his books, like they were the exact books that he's talking about. He's not talking about something that, it's not that he lost old books and now he's claiming new books. No, the books that were his are the books that he's claiming. Where am I? Okay. Now, would Rav really say that yeah, okay, I think it is pshat. Would Rav really say that in the event that these people in his house snuck out he had people sleeping over at his house, they snuck out in the middle of the night, and it was in that scenario that he's able to get his books back and his vessels back? But one second, would Rav really say that? Rav says, that there's the sugya that we're going to learn about the Masechtus Sanhedrin called Habo B'Machteres, a fellow who tunnels into somebody else's house in the middle of the night. So says Rav that in that case, so the whole thing with Habo B'Machteres is that it's a very high stakes game. A fellow tunnels into your house in the middle of the night. He's expecting a fight. He's expecting that when he comes up in that tunnel and he gets found and the Balabayas identifies him and says, "Holy smokes, there's a guy who tunneled into my house," the Baal Bayis is going to be very upset, so upset that how does it go? That be'etzim it becomes like a shootout, basically. What is it? Because the Baal Bayis is not going to say Eino Amamono, so he's going to come and he's going to defend it, and therefore the Ganef knows that the Baal Bayis is going to defend his money, so like they're going to kill each other or something. I'm a little rusty on the details, but be'etzim it's like a high stakes game where they're going to kill each other, and therefore what Rav is saying is that my time b'demei kananu, that since he's basically risking his life to steal these items, so he was kone by risking his life, he was kone them. So meaning, and therefore, if he was kone them by risking his life, so then he wouldn't have to return them. So why is Rav saying that we're talking about a scenario where there was this underground tunnel, and that's the scenario where Reuven would be able to get his stuff back? What do you mean? If we're talking about underground tunnels, so then the Ganif would be able to hold on to them because he's right. He's kona with it would belong to the Ganif. He was kona with his life. So, and for the Gemara, Hanemile de Kananu biBab Machteres. Look, Bab Machteres is a different situation to make Kara Masu Nafshe Liktala Balhani came into Lo Masu Nafshayu Liktala Lo. Bab Machteres is a shtickle different than this. Bab Machteres is when somebody tunnels into your house. So Milchatchila, he's coming in an aggressive manner, and he's coming in a dangerous manner. He's coming in an escalating manner, a dangerous manner, and therefore from the outset it's a high stakes game, and he's kona b'dmei kananu. This was a different scenario. This was talking about he had like house guests or something at his house. He had people sleeping at his house, and so they were allowed into the house. But that was all good. They were allowed into the house, but then they stole stuff and tunneled out. That's a different scenario than Abab Machteres, right? Somebody who's like, tunneling his way into a house in a dangerous escalatory manner. So by Bab Machteres, he's going to be right. He's kona benafsho, but not. This is not that. So therefore, it would be a proper case of theft, and Reuven would be able to get his stuff back. Omer says over Loshanu Ella Bal Habayis Osui Limkor Caleb. Says Rava, this discussion is talking about a Bal Habayis who normally sells his things, right? Meaning we're concerned that maybe the Bal Habayis actually sold it himself and maybe he felt bad, right? This whole kind of dialogue that we have is by somebody who normally sells things. About Bal Habayis She'eno Osui Limkor Caleb, but somebody who doesn't, he never sells stuff, right? Right? Some people like to sell things. Some people aren't sellers, right? So this is a person who doesn't normally sell things, and then all of a sudden he finds his silverware at Reuven finds his silverware at Levi's house, and Reuven is not the kind of person that normally would just sell his silverware. So then we don't need to go through this whole thing about we're concerned, but maybe he sold it, now he feels bad. This isn't a guy who sells things. Vidilma yeah, but maybe he was tight on cash, so he sold them because he needed cash. Yeah, but we're talking about a scenario where there were already rumors that he had been the victim of a theft. And this is somebody who doesn't normally sell things. So kind of all these things together means that you could probably assume that it was stolen from him and he didn't plan to sell it, and therefore he can get it, Reuven would be able to get it back from Levi. We're 15 minutes into the daf, and we're barely like scratching the surface of the daf. Like this isn't even the hard part yet. Yeah, that's how you know. Like sometimes when you have like a feeling it's going to be a big daf, and then just like it just proves itself to be right because like you're working on it and you're like barely making a dent. But this is the hard part over here. But let's see, who knows? Maybe it'll go quick. This part is the shtickle BavaKama. Until the end of the Amud. Big Amud too. Alright, it says the Gemara. Itmar was stated, Gonav u'mocher ve'achar kach hooker haganif. Gonav u'mocher ve'achar kach hooker haganif. Wow. Okay. I mean, it's the scenario that we've been talking about kind of today, right? Shimon steals from Reuven, sells it to Levi. Okay, now Levi doesn't realize at the time that he's purchasing, let's just stick with silverware, that he's purchasing silverware from Shimon the Ganif. He thinks that he's just purchasing silverware. So now Reuven finds the silverware by Levi. Now they also find out that Shimon is the Ganif. So Reuven, of course, gets back his silverware. The question is, where does he get paid back from? Right? Does he just take his silverware back and that's that? Does he have to pay Levi and then get back his money from Shimon the Ganif? Like how does this work? So Itmar was stated Gonav u'mocher. So if Shimon the Ganif stole silverware from Reuven the victim and sold it to Levi the buyer, v'chaka hukar Ganif, and then they discovered that Shimon the Ganif is Shimon the Ganif. Rav Mishmei de Reb Chia Omar, so says Rav Mishmei de Reb Chia, Hadin im Harishin, that Reuven needs to be'etzem pay Levi the buyer, and then he goes to Shimon the Ganif to recoup his money. Let me just confirm that that's correct. Yes, that's correct. That when Rav says that Hadinim Arishin, it means, right, so the Rishon is the original thief, right? Shimon the Ganif, and not Levi who subsequently bought it. Okay, so Shimon the Ganif stole silverware from Reuven the victim, and then sold it to Levi the buyer. Reuven discovers the silverware by Levi the buyer, and so Reuven, of course, is entitled to get his silverware back. But we're saying Adin im Harishin, that Reuven, what happens is, Reuven, in order to get back his silverware, he needs to pay Levi for the silverware, because Levi paid $1,000, let's say, for the silverware. So Levi gives back the silverware to Reuven, but he purchased the silverware for $1,000. He didn't do anything wrong. It was in good faith. So he doesn't have to lose the $1,000. So Reuven, when he gets back his silverware, he pays Levi $1,000. So Levi loses the silverware that he bought, but at least he gets his money. Reuven then goes to Shimon the Ganif and says, "Hey, I had to just buy back my silverware for $1,000. You need to pay me $1,000." Okay. Rabbi Yochanan Mishmei de Rabbi Yanai Omar Adin im Hasheni. Whereas Rabbi Yochanan Mishmei de Rabbi Yanai says that no, Reuven can simply go to Levi and say, "Levi, sorry to say so, but sadly it's true. Your silverware is actually my silverware. You need to give that back to me. Go speak to, meaning Reuven Adin im Hasheni kilu. Reuven goes to Levi and gets his money, gets his silverware back, and that's it. He doesn't have to pay anything. Levi can then go to Shimon the Ganif and say, "Hey, what the heck? Give me $1,000." Omer of Yosef v'lo pligi. It says of Yosef that they do not argue, that both Rav and Rabbi Yochanan Take agree. Kan lifnei yeyush hadin im hasheni, kan la'achar yeyush hadin im harishon v'tarvayu islihu deriv chizda. Okay. So everybody holds like Rav Chizda. Who can tell me what Rav Chizda says? Wow, that light in the back is shtickle driving me nuts. I don't know what I should do about it. I can technically sit in front of it. What can I tell you? Hopefully I'll be able to deal with it. So who can remember what Rav Chizda said? So Rav Chizda had said at the beginning of the parak that if it's before Yeush, right, meaning if somebody steals something and then somebody else consumes it, so the victim can go to either the thief or the consumer and claim, and get paid back. And we said that that's before Yeush. As long as he has not yet been Meyayish, he can claim it from either one. Okay? So let's read this again. So Rav Yosef says, Rav Yosef v'lo plige, that there's no machlokas between Rav and Rabbi Yochanan, because kan lifnei Yeush adin im hasheni, that when Rabbi Yochanan says that adin im hasheni, that Reuven can collect from Levi, that's because it's before Yeush. There was no Yeush. and therefore it's still Reuven's. He can collect from Shimon or Levi, so he can just collect back the silverware, and that is that. But if Reuven had already given up hope, well, then it belongs to Levi, because there was Yeush and Shinu Rishus, and therefore Reuven can, or if you say Yeush Kedikani, so then that's that. So then Reuven can, so then the silverware belongs to Levi, and Reuven needs to, get his money back from Shimon, right? So meaning he would get his silverware back from Levi, pay Levi, and then get his, recoup his $1,000 from Shimon. Okay, fine. But fine. So kan la'achar Yeush adin marishin v'tarvayu isud Rav Chizda, and everybody holds like Rav Chizda that if it's before Yeush, Reuven can go to either Shimon or Levi. Amar le Abaye v'lo plige, and Abaye says to Rav Yosef, really, is that so? That Rav and Rabbi Yochanan agree? They don't argue? Hamatnis kuna kilifnei Yeush domi. What about matnis kuna? What about matnis kuna? What about matnis kuna? Who can tell me about matnis kuna? Our matnis kuna are that if you slaughter an animal, so the zor l'chayayim v'keva goes to the kohen. The arm, the jaws, and the stomach go to the kohen. And we learn in the Mishnah, right? So where am I? So matnis kuna lifnei Yeush dami uflige, and yet they argued, it's not as we learn in the Mishnah, Omar lo mechor li me'eho. So in this case, we're going to have Shimon the butcher selling a cow to Levi the buyer, and you have Reuven the kohen, who's owed the matonis. Okay, so Omar lo mechor li me'eho shel pare. So if Levi the purchaser says to Shimon the butcher, I'd like you to sell me the intestines of the cow. Now the intestines include the stomach, and the stomach is the matanos that belong to Reuven the kohen. Matanos, and included in the intestines were the matnis kahuna. Nosna la kohen, so Levi the purchaser needs to give the matnis kahuna to Reuven the kohen. Ve'eno menake lo min hadamim. And it can't be the value cannot be deducted from the price of the intestines. Lokachemenu b'mishkol, but if Levi the purchaser purchased the intestines from Shimon the butcher by weight, so he paid by the weight, including the weight of the matonis. No, no saying la koin. So then he does give the matonis to the. So he gives the matonis to the koin, to Reuven the koin. Umenake lo min adomim, and it can be right if he paid by weight. So then that weight that goes to Reuven the koin can be deducted from the price that Levi the purchaser pays for the intestines. Ve'omer Rav, and says Rav, lo shanu elo sheshakol le'atzmo, and says Rav that is only if. Right, so Rav. Now, what did Rav say in our case? Rav said that hadin im ha rishon. Right. So in our case, we said Rav had said that Reuven would have to go to Shimon the ganif, not to Levi the purchaser. Okay. Now, ve'omar. Although we said what, that if it is lifnei Yeush, like we're saying by the intestines, it's right by the matnas kuna, it's lifnei Yeush. So we said that Rav would agree, however, that he can even go to Levi, right? If it's lifnei Yeush, so then it can even be adin imasheni, right? Meaning we wanted to say, right? Rav Yosef wanted to say that when Rav says hadin imarishin, it's dafka because it's after Yeush. But now here we're about to see what Rav says in a scenario of lifnei Yeush, which is by the matnas kahuna. And what does Rav say? V'amarav lo shanu elo sheshakol le'atzmo, that this is talking about when Levi the purchaser weighed it for himself. Aval shakol lo hatabach, but if the butcher weighed the weighed the intestines. So then, hadin im hatabach. So then, dafka, you go to the tabach, hadin im arishon ki'ilu. The din is with the tabach, and not with Shimon the butcher, and not with Levi the purchaser. So we see that here's a situation of matnos kahuna, which we're saying is kilifne yeush, and we see Rav saying his same opinion, which is hadin im harishin, that he has to go to Shimon and not to Levi. So ima af din ima tabach. That I'll say no, the din is even with Shimon the butcher. You can, if it's lifnei yeush, you can go either to Shimon the butcher or to Levi the purchaser. Right, Reuven can go to either Shimon or Levi. I may have thought to say matnis kehuna einon nigzalus, that matnis kehuna can not be stolen, and therefore wherever they are, he goes, right? And therefore, if they are currently with Levi, so he goes to Levi. Kamash Malon. So we're saying that no, you can even go and collect them from Shimon if you want. Okay, fine. Okay, so I didn't necessarily disprove Rav Yosef. Okay, because we're going to say that Rav says that you can go either to Shimon or to Levi if it's Lifnei Yeush. Ula Abaye da Omar Plige b'mai Plige. Now, according to Abaye, who says that Rav and Rabbi Yochanan do argue, right? Meaning Rav Yosef wanted to say that they agree. Just Rav is talking about the Achar Yeush, and Rabbi Yochanan is talking about Lifnei Yeush, but they agree according to Rav Yosef. Abaye said they disagree. So what are they disagreeing about? So Abaye do Amar Plige. According to Abaye, who said that they argue, but my Plige, what are they arguing about? B'Rav Chizde. They're talking arguing about Punkt Rav Chizde. About if it's before Yeush, is it in fact like Rav Chizda that you can collect either from the Rishon or from the Sheni? Or Rav says it's not like Rav Chizda that you could only collect from the Rishon and not from the Sheni. You cannot collect from Levi. Rav Zvid Omar says Rav Zvid Kigon shenisyaishu abailim biyad lokeach v'lo nisyaishu biyad ganef. Have you hear this? You hear this chilek? It's very, very, very geschmack. Very, very geschmack. We're like 3 daf from the end of BavaKama, and we're seeing this great chiddush, this great chilek over here. That, of course, we know about the concept of Yeush and Shinu Rishus. Of course, if we say Yeush Kedi Lo Koni, but Yeush and Shinu Rishus is Kona. Now, here's the gewaldige thing. Does it have to be in that order? Does the Yeush have to be before the Shinu Rishus, or could it be after? For example, Shimon steals the silverware. Right, going back to the silverware case, Shimon steals the silverware from Reuven and sells it to Levi. Now, when Shimon sold the silverware to Levi, Shimon the thief stole the silverware to Levi, Reuven had not yet given up hope. It was only after Levi had purchased the silverware that Reuven had given up hope of getting it back, which means that the Shinu Rishus was before the Yeush. So it wasn't Yeush and then Shinu Rishus, it was Shinu Rishus and then Yeush. So the question is, do you just need both of them regardless of the order? You need to check off the Yeush box and you need to check off the Shinu Rishus box? Or does it dafka need to be, right, regardless of the order, or does it dafka need to be in that particular order? So, and then the nafkamina would be, does it belong to Levi or not? If it belongs to Levi, then you can't, then you can't, it's Levi's, you can't collect it from him. So, Mar Sovar Yeush Ba'achar Kach Shinui Rishus Koni Shinui Rishus V'achar Kach Yeush Lo Koni. So Rav, who says that Davka Adinim Arishin, Fakert. Rabbi Yochanan, who says adin im hasheni, who says that you can even collect from Levi, and you wouldn't have to pay him for it. It's because he says, look, in order for it to be Levi's, then there would have to be Yeush plus Shinui Rishus in that order. But in this case, there was Shinui Rishus and then Yeush, so therefore Levi has no claim to it, and therefore Levi just gives Ruvain the Hadin im Hasheni. Ruvain just collects his silverware from Levi, and that is that. Hadin im Hasheni, right? That is that. Umar Sover, as Rav holds, Lo Shna, that it doesn't matter the order. And therefore there was Yeush and there was Shinui Rishus, and therefore Levi has a kinyan on it, and Ruvain therefore has to pay Levi for it, and then Ruvain goes to Shimon to recoup his money. Rav Pope Omar says, Rav Pope beglima duchuli alma lo plige dehader limare. Says Rav Papa, look, everybody agrees that the utensils, right, or he's saying a garment, but I've been talking about silverware. Everyone agrees that the silverware would go back to Reuven. Says Rav Papa, everyone agrees, of course, that the silverware would go back to Reuven. Shimon stole Reuven's silverware, sold it to Levi. Reuven gets his silverware back. When we talk about Rishon and Sheni, we're not talking about who does Ruvain recoup his money from. We're talking about who does Levi recoup his money from. And here there's a question of takonas hashuk. Who could tell me what takonas hashuk is? Honestly, I think I might need you to tell me because I don't know exactly what it is. I'm just kind of figuring out from like Rashi and stuff what it is. But basically, it sounds to me like what takonas hashuk is it's basically some kind of like protection of sorts for like buyers, right? That if somebody buys something, so in this case, Levi purchased silverware, so you can't just take it away from him and he's going to lose his money. That when you purchase something, if it turns out that it's like stolen or something, so then you'll at least get your money back, right? So meaning if Reuben's going to come to Levi to get his silverware back, he can't just take his silverware from Levi. He at least has to pay back Levi for what he spent on it. I don't know if this is like some kind of like, financial markets kind of thing in order to like, make sure that, people can buy things without being scared that like that they're going to lose it, that at least, in the event that like it turns out that it was stolen, you'll at least be able to get your money back. I don't know, whatever it is, but I think that's what takonas hashuk is be'etzim, right? That like, if you purchase something in the market, so then, it can't just be taken away from you. If it is, then you at least have to get paid back for it. So the question is there takonas hashuk? That Rav Mishmei de Reb Chia Omar Hadinim Arishin. So this is now from the perspective of Levi. Levi says Hadinim Arishin with one second. In Marishan, right? So Rav says that Hadinim Marishan, meaning Levi needs to interact and get paid back from the first person he interacted with in this story, which is Shimon the Ganef. He had first interacted with Shimon the Ganef. So that means that Ruvain goes to Levi and takes back his silverware, and he does not pay Levi for his silverware. Levi has to deal with Shimon HaGanef, i.e. there's no takonas hashuk. That we don't say that Ruvain cannot simply take the silverware away from Levi, he would have to pay Levi. We don't say that. Right, so Dina de Lokeach, de Lishkol Zuze Miganef, that Levi needs to get paid back his money from Shimon the Ganef, Velo Asubo takonas hashuk. They did not make takonas hashuk. Rabbi Yochanan Mishum de Rabbi Yanai Omar, whereas Rabbi Yochanan Mishum de Rabbi Yanai says, Hadinim Hasheni, that Levi gets paid back from the second person who he interacts with, which is Ruvain, who shows up and says that this is actually my silverware. Dina de Lokeach de Lishkol mi Baal Abayis, that Levi will get his money back from Ruvain, Ve'asubo takonas hashuk, and we have takonas hashuk that if Levi purchased this silverware, he didn't know that it was stolen. He purchased this silverware for $1,000. If it turns out that it belongs to Reuven and Reuven's now taking it back, Levi is entitled to get his money back. V'savar Rav lo asubo takona sashuk, but does Rav really not hold of takona sashuk? V'ho Rav Huna talmidei de Rav hava, but after all, Rav Huna was a Talmid of Rav. V'chonon bisha gonav glima. Now Chonon the shtunk, he stole a garment. V'zabna, and he sold it to Levi. Okay, so okay, fine. Also, the Kame de Rav Huna. Now the case came before Rav Huna. Amalei, Rav Huna says Lahu Gavra, and Rav Huna says to Reuven, whose garment was stolen. Right, Chonon the shtunk stole a garment from Reuven and then sold it to Levi. So now the case came before Rav Huna. Rav Huna says to Reuven, if you want to, okay, I know that Levi now has your garment. You're entitled to get it back, but you have to pay him for it. So we see that Rav Huna, the student of Rav, is invoking Takanos Hashuk and saying, look, if you wanna take your garment back from Levi, you have to pay him for it. So Zil Shriya Vitech, go and release your, deposit your that collateral, what Levi has of yours. You have to pay for it. So, and for the Gemara, Shiny Chonon Bisha, look, Chonon the Shtunk is a unique scenario, situation. Came the Leka the Ishtalume Mine Kilo Hooker Aganif Dami. Because since, good luck, you're getting paid back from Chonon the Shtunk, it's not going to happen. So therefore, it's basically it's as though he was not discovered, right? Meaning, we've been talking about up until now a scenario where we know who the Ganif is, and therefore there's a possibility that we can go to him and get our money back from him. That's not going to be the case by Chonon Bisha. It's Be'etzim Ki'ilu, we had no clue who stole it, because good luck getting your money back from him. So that is why Rav Huna says to Reuven, look, if you want to get back your garment, you're going to have to pay Levi for it. But in general, Rav would not hold of Takonas Hashuk. Omar Rave, says Rave, im Ganiv Meforsam Hu, if it's a well-known Ganif, Lo Asubo Takonas Hashuk, they did not have Takonas Hashuk. For Chonon Bisha, Meforsam Hava, the Asubo Takonas Hashuk. What do you mean? We just had a scenario with Chonon Bisha, who's a very, very famous shtunk, and Widavka said Takonas Hashuk. Rav Huna Davka said Takonas Hashuk, to the extent that even though he's a student of Rav and generally wouldn't say Takonas Hashuk, but Davka by Chonon Bisha he did say Takonas Hashuk. Nihidim Meforsim Levishusa, Lignevusa, Lo Meforsim. Granted, Chonon Bisha is known for being a shtunk, but not necessarily for being a big ganif. Okay, he's not necessarily known for being a big ganif. So says Rav, it's a big ganif, so then lo asubo takonas hashuk. Chonon Bisha was a different scenario, because a big shtunk is not necessarily a big ganif. Itmai was stated, Gonav ufora bechovo, gonav ufora bekefo, lo asubo takonas hashuk. De emor lo adaito, dehanu yahivas le midi. Period. Where am I? Okay, fine. Alright, great. Levi lent $1,000 to Shimon. Okay, or let's even say, okay, whatever. Levi lent $1,000 to Shimon. Now Shimon needs to pay back Levi, so you know what he did? He stole from Reuven, he stole silverware from Reuven, and he gave that to Levi. Okay, at least it's like a collateral or whatever. So now Reuven goes to Levi and he says, "Wait, you have right? That's my silverware." Now Levi didn't know, of course, that Shimon stole it. Right? Levi had lent $1,000 to Shimon. Shimon comes up with the silverware and he gives it to Levi. Levi doesn't know that it's stolen. Reuven shows up and he says, hey, Levi, that's my silverware. So Reuven, of course, can get back his silverware. The question is, does Reuven have to pay Levi? Is there takonas hashuk? So we say no. In this case, there's no takonas hashuk because, Shimon's paying the $1,000 to... No, Reuven paying Levi lending the $1,000 to Shimon had nothing to do with this silverware. He had lent $1,000 to Shimon. When he had lent $1,000 to Shimon, it was only later on that Shimon stole the silverware and gave it to Levi as like a collateral or something. So there's no takonas hashuk, right? Takonas hashuk is that if Levi purchases silverware and it turns out that it's stolen and Reuven wants it back, so he has to pay Levi, he has to pay back, reimburse Levi for what he spent. But this is not that. Levi didn't purchase the silverware. Levi lent $1,000 to Shimon. So again, Itmar was stated, Gonav ufara bechovo, that if Shimon stole silverware from Reuven in order to pay back his loan to Levi, or at least leave some kind of like meaningful collateral, or if Levi is a shop owner and he had given credit to Shimon and Shimon wanted to pay off his credit, so he stole from Reuven and gave it to Levi. So when Reuven comes to recoup, right, to get back his silverware from Levi, he doesn't need to pay Levi because there's no takonas hashuk over there. Lo asubo takonas hashuk de emor, because the aminon le lav adaito dehanu yahivas le midi. Because when you gave the $1,000 or the credit to Shimon, it had nothing to do with with the silverware, and therefore Reuven's entitled to get back his silverware without having to pay you anything. Mashkanta shovi mosin b'me'o. Mashkanta shovi mosin b'me'o. Osubo takonas hashuk. Shove b'shove. Amemor amelo osubo takonas hashuk. Mazutra omar osubo takonas hashuk. Who could tell me what this means? So mashkanta, I believe, is like a collateral. So meaning, if Levi lends Shimon $1,000. Oh no, what are we saying? Mosin b'meya. Okay, so let's just use their numbers, 100 and 200. So Levi lent Shimon $100. Levi lent Shimon $100. Shimon then steals from Reuven something that's worth $200, and he gives that to Levi. So Levi is lending Shimon the $100 based on the $200 collateral that he received, and that's a normal collateral that you would borrow 100 and give a larger collateral so that it's more meaningful. So in that case, if Reuven shows up to Levi and he says, "Wait, that collateral belongs to me," so there would be takonas hashuk, because since Levi only lent the $100 to Shimon based on the assumption of this $200 collateral, so then when he if he now needs to give the collateral back to Reuven, so Reuven would at least have to pay Shimon, Levi, I guess at least the $100 that he lent to Shimon, I imagine. So also takonas hashuk shove b'shove. But what if Levi lent $100 to Shimon and in return got a $100 in equal value collateral, which I think the assumption is that it is less accepted, that it would be the same value. So Amemor Omer lo asubo takonas hashuk. So Amemor says in that case there would not be takonas hashuk. Mazutra Omer asubo takonas hashuk. Mazutra says that there would be takonas hashuk in that case as well. Zavino shove b'shove asubo takonas hashuk. That if Levi purchased silverware from Reuven. No, Levi purchased silverware from Shimon at its market value. So there's takonas hashuk in there, and therefore if it turns out that it's stolen from Reuven, and Reuven takes it from Levi, Reuven would have to pay Levi for it. Shavet mea b'masin, but if Levi overpaid for the silverware, so Rav Sheshes Amar lo asubo takanas hashuk. Rav Sheshes says there's no takanas hashuk. Rava Amar asubo takanas hashuk. Rava says that there would be takanas hashuk, because sometimes people pay more, pay a higher price for things. V'hilchasa b'chulu nalacha, with all of these scenarios, is asubo takanas hashuk. The v'hilchasa nalacha is b'chulu asubo takanas hashuk. We say takanas hashuk in all of the scenarios. Levar migana v'ufar b'chovo, gana v'ufar b'kefo, with the exception being when Shimon stole from Reuven in order to pay for his loan or his credit, because in those cases the loan or the credit was extended, was given to Shimon regardless of the item, and therefore Reuven can take back his item without having to pay Levi for it. Avimi Barnaze Chamua de Ravina Hava de Ravina. So Avimi Barnaze was the father-in-law of Ravina. Havamasik Ba'u Gavra Arba'a Zuze. So Ravina's father-in-law had lent 4 zuz to Shimon. Okay, Ravina's father-in-law had lent 4 zuz to Shimon. Okay, where am I? Where? So Havamasik Ba'u Gavra Arba'a Zuze. Ganav Glima Asyaniale Ozfe Arba'a Zuze Achrina. Now Shimon had stolen a cloak, I believe, and given it to Ravina's father-in-law. When Ravina received that cloak, he said, okay, and he then proceeded to lend Shimon an additional 4 zuz. So the original 4 zuz was, right, Ravina's father-in-law had lent to Shimon without receiving anything, right? He lent Shimon 4 zuz. And therefore, if it turns out that the cloak that he later received belonged to Reuven, Ravina's father-in-law, so Reuven would not have to pay. Reuven, of course, can get back his cloak, but he wouldn't have to pay Ravina's father-in-law for it, because there's no takanos hashuk over there, because he lent the money to Shimon, nothing to do with the cloak that he received later. However, the interesting thing is what about that then, when Ravina received the cloak, he then lent Shimon an additional 4 zuz. So the question is that 4 zuz considered like, he gave those 4 zuz in exchange for the cloak? In which case you could say that if Reuven is taking back the cloak from Ravina's father-in-law, so then he should have to give 4 zuz to Ravina's father-in-law? Or do we say that no, that meaning when Shimon gave the cloak to Ravina's father-in-law then gave him a brand new loan, starting from scratch, in which case he's once again extending credit, right? He's once again giving these 4 zuz to Shimon without any connection to any garments or anything like that. It's a brand new loan. So L'sof hukra aganif, and then it was revealed that Shimon stole the cloak from Reuven. Also, the Kami Ravina, the case came before Ravina. Omar, and Ravina says, Kamoi gonav ufar b'chovo v'lo boi l'meisav le'v'lo midi. So, the first scenario was a scenario of simply Shimon stole from Reuven in order to pay back a loan, and therefore, when Reuven takes back his garment, he doesn't need to pay Ravina's father-in-law anything. But Hanachai Zuze Achrine, but the second 4 zuz that was given to Shimon upon Levi receiving the cloak, Shkol Zuzach, well then, Shkol Zuzach v'hadar glime. So for that one, Ravina's father-in-law would be entitled to receive payment for it when giving back the garment to Reuven, since he had only given the second set of 4 zuz to Shimon upon receiving the garment from him. Maskif la Rav Kohen. Rav Kohen asks a kasha v'dilma glima behane zuze kamoi yohava niale. But maybe the cloak that Shimon had given Ravina's father-in-law was for the first 4 zuz. Gonavufar b'chovo, gonavufar b'kefo. And therefore it would be a situation of that it's being used to pay back for his loan, in which case when Reuven takes it back from Ravina's father-in-law, he does not need to pay Ravina's father-in-law. And the second set, right, the second 4 zuz that Ravina's father-in-law gave to Shimon, Ravina's father-in-law then believed Shimon in the same exact way that he had believed Shimon initially, and therefore the money was once again lent to Shimon, irrespective of the cloak. And therefore I would argue that also for the second 4 zuz, when Reuven goes to collect his cloak, he shouldn't have to give Levi anything, not for the first 4 zuz. No, he shouldn't have to give Ravina's father-in-law anything, not for the first 4 zuz, nor for the second 4 zuz. Galgal milsa, motu l'kamid Babo, and the case came before Babo, Omar, and Babo said, Hilchasa, Rav Kohen, that the halacha is like Rav Kohen, that Reuven does not need to pay Ravina's father-in-law anything. Okay. Fine. Now, so now we're going to see one final incident before getting to the Mishnah. Super technical stuff. I think we're basically like almost at an hour already, I think. And we're still on the first Amud. I think the second Amud might be a little bit faster, but I don't think by much. But it might be. But yeah, this stuff is it's not bad or anything. It's just kind of I feel it's kind of dry and really long. Whatever. I just feel like I'm basically just reading it and explaining it. I feel like it's not particularly fun or anything, but alright, it's not all fun and games. Where are we? Okay, so now we're going to have a incident with Narsha'a, Papona'a, and Machoza. Those were 3 different places. Now, who was from Narish? Rav Puppet was from Narish. Who was from Papona'a? Was that Rav Hamnuna? Was Rav Hamnuna was considered Papona'a? I can't remember. Maybe. Oh, no. Was that Rav Acha bar Yaakov? Rav Acha bar Yaakov, and who else is Rav Eliezer ben Yaakov? No, I think maybe Rav Acha bar Yaakov was Paponoi. And then there's Machoza. Machoza is Rava. Okay. I mean, this isn't necessarily Rava in this case, but that's where Rava lived. So Narsha Gonav Sifra. So a guy from Narish, or Narsha, he had stolen a book from Reuven. Zabne le Papono, he then sold it to Papono, betamnun zuze, for 80 zuz. Also Papono, Zabne levar machozo b'mei ve'esrin zuze. Papono then flipped it to Machozo for 120 zuz. Okay, so Narsha had stolen the book from Reuven. Narsha had then sold it to Paponoah for 80 zuz. Paponoah then sold it and flipped it to Machoza for 120 zuz for a 40 zuz profit. The Sofukra Aganav, and then it turned out, and then they discovered that actually Narsha had stolen it. Amar Abai says, Abai Lezel Mori Disifra, so Reuven, the victim, should go. V'yoav le levar machoza, right? So the machoza now has the book. He had paid 120 zuz for it. So Reuven should pay the machoza tamnon zuzei 80 zuz, which is what Paponoah had paid the Narsha for it. V'shakil Sifrei, and then Reuven should pay 80 zuz to Machazah and take back his book. V'ozu by Machazah, and then the Machazah can go. V'shakil Arba'in mi Paponah should then take the 40 zuz of profit that Paponah had made from the sale, and then so Reuven will pay Machazah 80 zuz, and then Machazah will get back his final 40 zuz from Paponah. Maskif Rov as a kasha hashta lokeach miganif osubo takonas hashuk. 1 second, we said that if somebody purchases silverware from a ganif, he's entitled to get his money back in full, the takonas hashuk. Lokeach mi boya. Certainly, when Machazah had purchased it from Paponah, both scenarios of people, making good faith purchases, certainly Machazah should be entitled to get repaid in full. Ella Amar Rave, rather says Rave, Lezul Mori de Sifra v'yoyev le'levar Machazah me'eve'esun zuzei v'shakil Sifrei. No, rather Reuven should pay Machazah in full, the full 120 zuz, and then Reuven can get back his book. V'lezul Mori de Sifra, and then let Machazah go. V'lishkol arba'in mi Paponah v'tamnon min Narsha, and then let Machazah then go and get paid back 40 zuz from Paponah and 80 zuz from Narsha. Okay, now we get to a new Mishnah. Zeba b'chaviso shel yayin v'zeba b'chado shel dvash. So you have, I was trying to think what we should call these guys. Honey boy, honey man, honey Jew. Oh, that's nice. Honey Jew and Weinstein. Those are good Jewish names. Honey Jew and Weinstein. That's some good names. Good Jewish names. Honey Jew and Weinstein. So you have Honey Jew and Weinstein. Zeba b'chaviso shel yayin. Weinstein's coming with his barrel of wine. V'zeba b'chado shel dvash, and Honey Jew is coming with his jug of honey. Nizdika chavish shel dvash. Now, Honey Jew's jug gets cracked, and he's going to lose his honey. Now, honey is considered to be more expensive than wine. So v'shafach zeh es yeno v'hitzas dvash l'socho. So what Weinstein did was he said, you know what? I'm going to spill out my wine, and I'll transfer Honey Jew's honey into my jug, into my wine jug, and we will salvage his honey. Better that his more expensive honey should be saved rather than my less expensive wine. Well, since Weinstein did this of his own volition, nobody had asked him to. So look, he can get paid back, I guess, for his toil, for doing a favor. But Honey Jew doesn't owe Weinstein for his wine per se. But but if Weinstein had said, look, I'm happy to save your wine, your honey, and I'll spill out my wine and save your honey, but I would like for you to pay me for my wine that I'm going to lose in the process of salvaging your honey. So again, I'll save your honey, but just pay me for my wine that I'm going to spill on the floor. So then Honey Jew needs to pay Weinstein for his wine. Shotaf nachal chamoro v'chomer chavero. Okay, so now if you have two Jews, let's call them Reuven and Shimon. They're walking down the river, and the river washed away their donkeys. Now, Reuven's donkey was $100, and Shimon's donkey was $200. So Reuven says, look, I can only save one donkey. Let me save Shimon's donkey. It's the more expensive of the two. So again, shotaf nachal chamoro v'chomer chavero. If the stream or river. I don't know the what's a nachal? A nachal is like a stream, I guess. And it was going to wash away the donkeys. Ruvain's donkey is $100. Shimon's donkey is $200. And Ruvain says, you know what? Shimon's donkey is more expensive. I'll save his donkey rather than mine. Better that his should be saved than mine. Ein lo elascharo. Shimon only owes Ruvain, for his toil, but not. He doesn't have to pay Ruvain back for his donkey that got lost. But if Reuven had said to Shimon, "Ani atzil shelcha, look, I'm happy to save your donkey, which is the more expensive one, batanosin li es sheli, but I would, but for me to do that, I need you to pay me back for my loss, right? I could save my donkey and then I'll have a donkey. By saving your donkey, I'm not going to have a donkey. So at least just pay me back for my donkey that I'm going to lose. Chayav litin lo. So if that's the condition, so then Shimon has to pay Reuven the $100 for his donkey that he's going to lose in the process of saving Shimon's donkey. Says the Gemara, "Amai, why do we say ein lo ela scharo?" Right? We had said that you have Honeydew and Weinstein. Honeydew's honey, right? A container of honey broke. Weinstein spills out his wine in order to save Honeydew's honey. So we say Weinstein can only get, is only entitled to get paid back for his toil. But what about the fact that Honeydew's honey was about to end up on the floor and go in the garbage? It's hefker. So Weinstein is be'etzem just taking ownerless honey. If Honeydew wants it back, he should have to pay Weinstein in full. It's Weinstein's. It was hefker. It was about to go on the floor and get ruined. Weinstein spilled out his wine, grabbed the honey, which is more expensive. If Honeydew wants it, he should pay. If Honeydew wants it, he should pay Weinstein in full. It's Weinstein's now. If he wouldn't have taken it, it would have fallen on the floor and gotten ruined. So let Weinstein say to Honeydew, I don't just want to be paid for my toil, I want you to buy the honey off of me because I got it. It was ownerless and I took it. Milotani, after all, do we not learn in a brisa? If a fellow had jugs of wine and jugs of oil, and he saw that they were going to break. Lo yomar hareze trume umaiser al peris sheyesh li b'soch beisi. He shouldn't say, look, I have a whole bunch of tevel in my house. I have a whole bunch of tevel wine and tevel oil in my house. Why don't I do this? Why don't I now separate trumas and maisris? These jugs will be my trumas and maisris, and now they're going to break. Okay, and they'll get lost. Sorry, what can I do? But I don't need to separate Meiser anymore from those other things. Meiser has been separated, and I can now consume the wine and the oil that I have at home because it has been tithed. I mean, it ended up on the floor. Okay, it ended up on the floor. What can I do? Vim Omar lo Omar klum. Right. So we say that he cannot do this. Right. So lo yomar hareze truma umaiser al perish li besoch beisi v'im Omar. And if he said this, lo Omar klum. Then it's irrelevant. It doesn't count as truma and meiser because it's hefker. Right? You can't separate trumas and meisers from hefker. So if that's the case, then can't Weinstein just take Honeydew's honey and it's his? So K'da Omar Rabbi Yirmiyah. Wait 1 second. Yeah, exactly. Right. Okay. Kedamar Rabbi Yirmiyah. Well, it's like we're going to see Rabbi Yirmiyah later on. Kishe'ekel beis habad karuch aleh. Well, it's talking about where, I don't know, like some netting from like the olive press or something was wrapped around it. Basically, it was wrapped. It wasn't a scenario where honey Jews, honey jug, mamish cracked, and like all of his honey was about to like get ruined. That's not the scenario. It was wrapped. Now, yes, it cracked, and I guess that there was some honey that was dripping out. Some of it was going to be lost, but it wasn't like like Weinstein can be like, no, it's mine, because it would have all gotten ruined. It wouldn't have all gotten ruined. He would have lost some, and it was very nice of Weinstein to spill out his wine in order to salvage more of Honeydew's honey. But it wasn't a scenario of Hefker, and therefore, look, if he stipulates, I want you to pay me for my wine, okay, so he has to pay him for the wine, but otherwise he just has to pay him for his toil. So Achinamis here also Kshe'ekel Beisabad Karuch Aleh, we're talking about where the honey was wrapped in some kind of wrapping, and therefore it wasn't like it was Hefker. Ve'im Omar Lo Omar Klums. Now we had said in this Braise with the wine and the oil and the truma, and it was breaking. So we said you can't say that it's going to be truma and meiser on my stuff in my house, and if you do, it doesn't count. Ve'atanya. What do you mean it doesn't count? Ve'atanya, we learned about Mishababa derech umos biyado. If a fellow is meandering on his way, and he's got a bunch of money, the honest kenegdo, and there's a stunk coming his way, and he's like, oy vavoy, what am I going to do about this stunk? Lo yomer, you shouldn't say, hare peiris sheyesh li b'soch beisi michulalim amos halalu. You should not say, look, I got a bunch of cash over here. I don't know what's going to be with this stunk. He might take it away from me. Chaval that I should lose all this cash. Look, I have a bunch of meiser sheni in my house. That stuff needs to either go to Yerushalayim, or I could be mechalel it onto money and bring the money to Yerushalayim. Why don't I just be mechalel the meiser sheni onto this money, and I'll take this money to Yerushalayim, and if this shtunk ends up taking it from me, well, alright, there goes that money, but at least I can consume, my meiser sheni at home. Right, so he figures, let me just transfer quickly the Kedushas Meiser Sheni onto this money before the shtunk shows up. So we're saying don't do that, right? Lo Yomar, you shouldn't say, Omar, but if he did, Tvarav Kayomin, then it works. So how come we said by the oil and by the wine, he cannot, right? If he shouldn't do it, and if he does it, it does not work. Yet over here we're saying he shouldn't do it, but if he does it, it does work. So well, here by the money and the shtunk and the meiser sheni, it wasn't 100% that the shtunk was going to give him a hard time. He just wasn't sure. But if he could save it, then sounds fine. If he was able to save it, so then who cares? Let him do it. Why are we suggesting that he shouldn't really do it? So, well, it wasn't so obvious. Look, I mean, the fact of the matter is there was a shtunk coming his way, and there was a decent chance he was going to give him a hard time. And it wasn't necessarily going to be easy to save it. It could be saved, but it wasn't so obvious. So that's what we're talking about. So he really shouldn't say that he's going to be mechal the meiser sheni on this money. But if he did, it will still technically work. Skip. I think it was hard to figure out what exactly Rashi was saying. I think what he was saying is skip the next line. So let's do it. So skip to the beginning of, I think, 2 lines from now. V'ha Tanya. But we learn in a brayso. Harisha eser chovyis shel tevel tame. So you have a Levi. A Levi receives meiser. Right? Levi receives, right? A fellow harvests his field, gives 10% of the field to the Levi. Now the Levi, and that's what's called meiser, 10%. The Levi needs to take 10% of what he receives and give that to the kohen, and that's what's called trumas meiser, and it has the status of truma. So, v'atani arisha hayulo eser chovyos shel tevel, if a Levi had 10 barrels of meiser, a Levi has 10 barrels of meiser from which he cannot consume until he separates 10% of trumas meiser and gives it to the kohen. So again, Vatanya. Sorry, I got distracted. I don't know what just happened. I think somebody went outside. Yeah, somebody I'm pretty sure went outside. Vatani, Eser Chovius Shel Tevel. He had 10 barrels of Tevel Tome. Right? Meiser that was Tome that had not yet separated Trumas Meiser. Viro Achas Mein Shenishbiro. And he saw that one of the barrels broke. Okay. Ocean is galso, or it got opened up, it got revealed, right? And Mayim Megulin, right, revealed liquids. You have to be concerned that snake venom got into them. So you have these, barrels of liquid, and either one of them broke, or they got revealed. Omer, he can say, Hare he trumas meiser al teisha chavosel. Well, this broken one or this opened one is the one that I'm going to set aside as trumas meiser. It's going to be trumas. This one is going to be the one that I'm giving to the kohen. Uvshemen lo yaise kain, but he shouldn't do this with oil. Wait 1 second. Okay, I guess that those chavios must have been wine. Is that the point? Probably. As a chavios, I assume that we're talking about wine. Yeah, I think we're talking about wine, right? So that's with wine. You can give it to the kohen, separate it for the kohen. But v'shem came, but he shouldn't do it with oil. Mipnei hefsid kohen. But he shouldn't do that with oil because because if he does it with oil, then it's going to be a significant loss for the kohen. So I think that the kasha is that, meaning we had said earlier, right, that he had arishayo ton. Kadeyayin v'kadeshem v'roshe mishtabas lo yomar reza trumas meiser al peros sheish b'soch beisi v'im amar lo amar klum. And over here we're saying that he can set aside the broken barrel for trumas meiser. So Rabbi Yirmiyah says Rabbi Yirmiyah k'she'ekel beisabad karu chalel. It's talking about where there was like this olive netting stuff that was around it, and going to prevent it from like mamish just like becoming hefker. So bishlama shenishbira chazia. So I understand if we're talking about a barrel of wine that got broken, okay, as long as you could salvage the wine, you could still use it. And is Ellen is galso, but if it got revealed and it's revealed liquids that snake venom might be in, lamai chazia, what is it fit for? Why are we saying that you'd be able to give it to the kohen? And if you're going to say, well, you could sprinkle it around the house, I think the point is that it would make the house smell nice. But we learn in the Brisa, that if you have revealed water that might have snake venom in it, you should not spill it out in the Rishus Harabim, the public domain, because maybe somebody will step on it. Don't mix, I think, like mud with it. And don't use it to kind of like keep down the dust in the house. You should not use it you should not give it to your animal to drink. Nor your friend's animal. So therefore, like, how are you going to give it to a kohen? What can he do with this revealed liquids? So the Avad law b'misanenes kirib Nechemia. Well, he strained it like Reb Nechemia. The time that we learned in the Brisa misanenes yesh ba mishum gilui, that a strainer that is open, you have to be concerned that maybe snake venom got in it. Reb Nechemia a mosai, says Reb Nechemia. Wait, when do you have to be concerned about the snake venom? Bizman shatachtona megula, if the bottom of the strainer is revealed. But if the bottom of the strainer is closed, sa'af alpi she'elyona megula, even though the top of the strainer is opened, ein ba mishum giloi, we are not concerned about revealed liquids, lefisha eres shel nochash dome l'sfug, because snake venom is like a sponge, vitzof v'omid b'mkomo, and would stay on top of the strainer, and therefore it would be okay. So as long as the bottom of the strainer is closed, if the top of the strainer, it's okay, even if the top of the strainer is open, because like the snake venom would kind of stay on the top, and in that scenario, I guess you'd be able to give it to the kohen. Lavit marla, but didn't we state about it But that's only if you haven't mixed it around. But if you mix it around, also then it's going to be forbidden. So over here, when you give it to the kohen, he's going to like pour it out, and then it's going to be a problem. So also nami, there also efshir demonach midi apuma de chavisa de shafi le. Yeah, but still, you could put some kind of like filter on the top of the barrel or something to make sure that like none of the, I guess when you're pouring it, that none of the, it would like keep out the snake venom, I guess. Okay. Reb Nechemia mi tarminon, but one second. How could Reb Nechemia say that you, right, because we're talking about a scenario where the Levi had a bunch of tevel that was tameh, right? A bunch of meiser that was tameh. And we're saying that he's going to separate Trumas Meiser from that. But Reb Nechemia mitarminon, would Reb Nechemia say that you would separate tameh from tameh? We learned about it. Tormin min tameh ala tameh. We can separate from tameh for tameh. Min tar ala tar, and from tar for tar. Min tar ala tameh, and from tar for to like be separate from tameh stuff. Avalo min tameh ala tar. You can't, you know, if you have tahor stuff, you can't say, oh, I'll separate like tameh stuff and use that for a truma. No, you can't say. Reb Nechemia omer af min tameh ala tameh lo yitiru litrom ela b'shel demai. And even Reb Nechemia says you can only use, right, you can only separate tameh from tameh if we're talking about demai. Well, achanam b'shel demai. Okay, so we could say that this also is talking about demai, and that is why you'd be separating tameh from tameh. Omar, we said earlier, v'shemen lo yaisa kain, that do not do this with oil. Mipnei, right? Don't separate this tameh oil. Mipnei hefsed koyin, out of concern for the loss of the koyin. Maishno shemen. What's the problem with shemen? Deroi lehadlik, that well, you can use oil for lighting, and that would be very beneficial for the koyin. But I guess you wouldn't be able to use it if it's tameh or broken, I guess. Yayin nami, but wine also roi leziluf, so that is also could be used for, you know, sprinkling around the house. So why are we not concerned that he's going to lose out on that sprinkling wine? And if you're going to say ziluf lav milsei, and if you're going to say, well, sprinkling isn't really so important, Shmuel, but Shmuel says mishum b'chia shosin milog b'sela umizalf milog b'shtayim. I think what this means is that kilu, when wine is like a normal acceptable price, okay, so buy wine for drinking. But if wine is like super expensive, so don't spend money on wine for drinking if it's too expensive. But you still are going to want to, you know, have it at least to keep the house smelling nice. So like, it seems like wine for sprinkling is a pretty significant, important thing. Here we're talking about be chodosh. Yeah, but here we're talking about new wine, which isn't good for sprinkling. Liyashno, but you can always age it, and then it will just wait, and then it'll be old wine. So asi be litektakala. Yeah, but if you wait, then you might end up like drinking the wine, and this is tamei wine. Shemen nami asi ba litektakala, but can't you also end up running into trouble with tamei wine, oil? So demonach bechli maos. Yeah, but you're going to put the oil in a disgusting vessel that you wouldn't end up eating from it. Yeah, but can't you also put the wine in like a not very nice vessel? But the Gemara says that wouldn't really make sense. Meaning, oil you could put in like a disgusting thing because you're just going to use it for fuel anyways. But the sprinkling of the house, it's to make the house smell nice, and to kind of for a nice purposes. So why would you put it in a disgusting vessel? You wouldn't, and therefore you might end up, if you're waiting for it to get old, so then you might end up drinking it or whatever. And this whole concept of, do we have to actually be concerned about people making a mistake and consuming it, is actually machlokas tanoim. The Tanya is within the brisa, chovis shel yayin shel truma shenitmes. If you have a barrel of wine of truma that became tamei, Beishamai says Beishamai tishpoch hakol, you got tishofich hakol, you have to spill it all out because we have to be concerned that somebody is going to end up drinking it. Beisil omim, Beisil say teos ziluf, you can use it for sprinkling it around the house, and we're not concerned that people are going to end up drinking it. Amr Yishmael Reb Yossi, Ani Achriya, and I will settle it. Babayis Tais Ziluf, in the house, sprinkle it. Uvasade Tishofech, and in the field you should spill it out and not use it. Tishofech Hakol. Ikadam doesn't say Bayashon Tais Ziluf. If it's already old, then you could immediately use it for sprinkling in the house of a chodesh. But if it's new, Tishofech, spill it out. Hakol, spill it all out, so that you don't end up drinking it. Amrulo, they said to him, that isn't really a, I will, kind of settle it. I don't really remember the technical things over here. It's like, what does Rashi say? Yahavatoni Beishamai, Bain Nitmes Babayis, Bain Basada Tishofech, Akol. If Beishamai, I'm reading Rashi, like the first thin line of Rashi, if Beishamai would have said that whether it's in the house, whether it's in the field, you have to spill everything out. Beisil Omen, Beisil says, Bain Babayis, Bain Basada Taisa Ziluf, whether in the house, whether in the field, you have to sprinkle it. And Reb Shimon Omer, I guess, what was it? Reb Shmuel Reb Yossi says, Nitma Basada Tishofech, look, if it's in the field, spill it out. Tishofech Akol Babayis, if it's in the house, and Taisa Ziluf. So at the time of the Tarvayu Kamachra, so then he's kind of like, kind of being a third opinion to weigh it in favor of each one and each one. Ba'avlu the Gabe Bayis Trey, the Gabe Sada Trey, Vilchsik Trey, Shenom Diver Yochav Makom Shnaim, Tachrab Lahatos, Ksiv, Keo Dekulim Atonis the kind of Hacha, but over here, the Inu Lo Galu Datayu, they didn't, Beishamai Beisil didn't exactly say to the Ave Shum Midei Chiluk Bein Bayis Lasode Time the Nafshe Kamer. So Hillel and Beishamai never actually said any distinction themselves about the house or the field. So therefore, Rabbi Shmuel Reb Yossi seems to just be coming up out of nowhere with some kind of distinction that isn't necessarily based on anything real or something like that. This is weird. I feel really weird now. I'm in a different place. I feel like this was a really long daf. I don't even know how long it was. I feel like maybe it was an hour and 50 minutes. But I'm not exhausted. It was such a weird daf. I'm not exhausted. I'm just I feel like I'm just in a weird trance. Peace.